So now we're going to pivot because today we're talking about standards. We're talking about standards, right? So while I'm pulling my slides up, we can go through and do some introductions. I'm Kiana, for anyone who doesn't know me. She's going to jump to the bottom of Fire, and I think Fire is still putting slides on there. I'm not sure. But we're working on introductions, which, again, if anybody feels frisky during the presentation, you're welcome to do your introduction then as well. But we're going to talk a little bit about the standards, particularly standards from a psychometric standpoint. There are a number of different standards set forth in the ISO 17024 protocol, and we can drop a link to that in the chat as well if you're looking to secure your own copy of the standards or the guidelines. But you have a number of different accrediting bodies, and most of those accrediting bodies are based on the ISO 17024 protocol. So some of the larger ones are going to be ICE, which has the NCCA, accreditation. The other one is the other larger one is ANAB, which used to be ANSI. Those are some of the larger accrediting bodies, and then you have some specialty accrediting bodies as well that will certify specialty certifications. For instance, I think there's like the Nursing Board of Specialties that will accredit certifications specifically in the nursing field and what have you. But for the most part, they are all based on the ISO standards. So, where there's a little bit of variety based on the field or the industry, they're all kind of looking for the same thing. And that's essentially what I'm going to go through today. And particularly what I'm going to go through is what they're looking for in a psychometric capacity. So you have all kinds of different documents and protocols and guidelines for governance, for for the issuance of certificates and all of these other things, right? The ISO standards specify lots of different areas in which you need to make sure that your credential is locked and loaded, or is prepared in order to be accredited. But the ones that we're going to speak about specifically are the psychometric components, right? There are some very specific protocols related to testing and examination, related to validity, related to reliability of your examination that you'll need to submit along with your application. And that's the protocol that we're going to go through today. Okay, awesome. So ensuring quality and credibility. I'll talk about the definition of professional certification just to provide clarity in the conversation there. So you have two different types of credentials, which are generally covered in these areas. The first type is a certification. The other type is a certificate. These in the English language these two terms in the English language generally are used interchangeably, but in the world of credentialing, they have very different meanings. On the certification side, when we are certification professional and professional practice, we are certifying that professional is a practitioner in the industry. We are certifying that professional has the knowledge, skills, and abilities to perform the functions and a job task related with the role, whether that is a job or whether that is in practice. So this might apply to your carpenters, your nurses, your cybersecurity professionals, right? anybody who is applying for a job and has been certified by an accrediting body, we're stating that they have the skills, the knowledge and skills and abilities to perform the task at hand. Now, a certificate is generally associated with the completion of a training. So a certificate is generally certifying that you have completed 5 or 10 hours of some very specific task or skill. So if you are doing a training, one example I could use, the example that I use is pick insertion. I just saw an email from Pip, right? So to use the example of the nurses, right? A certification would certify that a nurse is prepared to practice in the role as a nurse, but a certificate might be related to a very specific skill that she'll perform while she's in the job. So for instance, pick insertion, right? Some nurses insert picks and some don't, but the ones that do might have a certificate to ensure that that skill that they have is relevant and valid and up to date, and also to give them a little bit of training in a very specific area of nursing that is not associated with their daily practice. I want to make the two distinctions there, because the standards that we'll speak about apply to certification. So we're certifying people as practitioners in the role. Some of the stuff they also on this slide is about importance of accreditation, but I think everybody's already got the gist. I want to jump to, the table, because the table is kind of how I get oriented. Okay, this is all cool. I'm gonna jump to the table. The table is kind of where I live. So these are not labeled, and that's cool. Maybe I will add some labels here for future relevance, but you'll see within the ISO standards, right? The first standard that applies to the psychometric validity of your examination is the ability to conduct or otherwise use a legally defensible and psychometrically valid job analysis. So this is where you're either going to find somebody who is in your organization who might refer to themselves as a psychometric practitioner or a psychometrician or a test development person, test validation person, in your organization who can provide these documents and materials. They're going to provide to you job analysis or practice analysis, in which case you've done the things that are listed on the right side of the screen. So in a job analysis or occupational analysis, practice analysis, right, we have a couple of different terms that we generally use interchangeably here. You are going to have taken, these things generally take between 6 months to a year, where you've worked with a group of subject matter experts to develop the competencies, the knowledge, skills, and abilities for the role that will be the products of your job analysis. This process generally starts with a job observation, where your psychometric person, whether they're internal or external as a vendor, the way that we do, your psychometric person goes out to observe the job at hand, and then we'll take notes on how that job is performed, and through that observation period, develop a list of competencies. That list of competencies will then create the foundation of your assessment, your examination, because you can't assess or examine anyone without understanding what it is that they do. And so if you've gone through the accreditation process, done your application for accreditation, and you didn't have a job analysis, the psychometric portion of your review is probably going to tell you to go back and do one. You might have had one done, but it's outdated. They'll probably tell you to update it. This is generally a function that we perform about every 5 years or so, depending on how quick or how slow your industry moves. Right now, industry movement is kind of paced alongside technology, right? So as technology changes, all of our industries are kind of forced to keep up. That's certainly happening in the medical industry. It's happening, I think it's happening in every industry, where a lot of things used to kind of be stagnant. Now, if there's any technology involved, depending on the level of significance of technology involvement in your role, it's going to change. So I would encourage people to even do their job analysis more frequently. The other thing I would say is that if you haven't done a job analysis since the pandemic, it is also a significant change in practice for many people to be conducting their role from home. Many of our previous job analysis would have been based on that role being performed in an office. And so if the environment in which your job is being performed has changed, whether those persons are now in the field or whether they're at home, you might not necessarily have to redo your entire job analysis, but it might be helpful to add a cluster or a domain specifically for remote work, to ensure that people can handle the equipment, to ensure that people can, whatever changes are associated with the change in that role, which generally is like equipment handling, supervision, project management, those types of things. Any questions on job analysis, or does anybody have any specific examples about job analysis? Cool, nobody coming forward. So here are the next three set of standards. The next one is demonstrated experience in the development of psychometrically valid competency examinations. For this, to fulfill the standard, generally, they're just looking for resumes to be included within the validation report. So there's nothing terribly technical there.